Hey,
Good
Didi, can you
morning.
believe this is episode 4, isn't it?
Yeah, this is.
Whose brilliant idea was this? Because I'm telling you, it is something I look for.
Actually, it was this strange guy kind of has come into my life and years ago and mentioned something about it.
And I
I
can't
think
get
you
rid of
know
him.
him. I think you know him.
Know him. I am him.
Yeah. He's got a great, fantastic brother, beautiful, beautiful kids, beautiful wife.
And then there's him.
Yeah.
Hey, so how are you doing this morning?
Okay. Yep. Had a rough night starting out, but so then that always leads into the well, how's your morning starting now? So, but I did take a pain pill this morning, so that's a good thing, I guess. That I didn't want to start my day in pain, which means it's just going to
Oh,
grow worse throughout the day. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's then I think today's topic will be perfect, right? Thinking
Right.
about the positive things and fun because it
Right.
is, yeah, plenty of
Yeah.
reason to get down, but and sometimes you got to experience that, and other times it's like, okay, yep, it makes sense, and now I can move on and try to do something else
Right. Right. Yeah.
what's it
I
good?
have
What
my
good?
coffee. That's the joy of most things.
So I think this would be the great time for the bucket list. And what's
Yeah.
interesting, when we created our questions, we hadn't talked specifically about anything. You did your set of questions,
Right.
I did my set of questions, and then as we're finishing this up, I think we'll do some pairing, and maybe I'll change the order of some of mine so they kind of line up. And you don't have to do this, right? But I'm thinking if some of the questions are in sort of the same spots, I don't know, just make it easier for friends to talk
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Yeah.
about them. So you had written, most people think about the things they want to accomplish or places they want to go or experiences as part of a bucket list. You may even have a list organized by amount of time and priority. If you had to write a bucket list down, what would you include? What would you organize? I'm laughing at the organize because didn't you just say yesterday when we talked about how you're about organize? This is
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
What would you organize it with goals for the first 6 months, then one
Right.
year, followed by 5 years or more? What would be your number one on the bucket list? And then we'll talk about that. But one of the ones that I wrote down is what's on your friend's bucket list that you can help with,
Okay.
and how can
Okay.
you help?
Okay.
So I think everybody knows about the bucket list, right? I
Yeah,
mean, they've made movies about it.
they
Uh,
sure have. Yeah.
so your thoughts on the bucket list, right? How has it shaped your or affected how you go through all of the stuff you have to go through?
Yeah. Well, I think for one, I had a bucket list prior to, getting sick. That was one of those things that you think about. I mean, you don't take it as serious, but it's like before, I die, I want to go here or see this or do this. And I think with the diagnosis, then it brings it to the forefront. And then some things dropped off the bucket list because now they don't seem quite as important in my time frame as some of the other things. My son, making sure that my son was settled, you know, was always been a priority for me, making sure that he, gets to where he needs to be as an adult. And so that obviously is the number one for me on the bucket list. And so everything I've been doing and that was one of the conversations I was just having with my friend Tiana was about how I support him, and what that does and how that affects other things is because that is the number one, wanting to make sure that if something happens or when something happens to me, that he's settled, that my grandkids are settled, because having a loss is already a tough time. But then when
Mhm.
you're having a loss and you got to now find housing and you got to find this those are things that you get concerned with. So making sure that my insurance policies are up to date, that was important. Making sure that he had a home was important. So, he now has his home and property. So that those were important things, but just making sure that in general, he's okay. So then you feel confident that, or I can depart this world feeling confident that not only is he okay, but then that next generation is going to be okay too, because he's okay. That then my grandkids are going to be okay. So that's the definite number one for me. And then I started looking at other things like wanting to go see the Little House on the Prairie, Walnut Grove. I wanted to see it. I wanted to drive past through Mankato because that was such a big part of the show, of them going to the big city of Mankato, which isn't that big, at least, looking at it now when you think in comparison, it's bigger than Walnut Grove, but it's still not like some huge, it's not Minneapolis by any means. And so, but it was good to see, good to set eyes on it. And then I want to drive Route 66, and so I have been, as things have been progressing, I have kind of cut down a little bit on driving from start to end, because I've driven the west side of it from Arizona, into California. And so I thought, well, maybe it would be better if I just went from Arizona to the beginning of it, so that I am still getting the experience and I will have experienced the full Route 66, but not where I'm taking time that I could be doing something else with. A big part of my bucket list was spending time with friends, and
Okay.
loved ones, and making sure that I was making time for them. Because I think, people come to funerals, and people come to memorial services, and people do all of that, and they'll go back and look at memories, but we always have that. I wish I had spent more time, and that's one thing I personally wouldn't want my friends to feel. I wouldn't want my loved ones to feel. And I don't want to feel like, oh, I wish I had spent more time. I'm taking the time now to make sure that I'm spending time with those I care about as much as I can. Obviously,
Right.
I'm limited in some ways. I'm limited financially in some ways, and I'm limited. I mean, I don't have money to fly all over, but all the time, but I can take money to fly here and there once a year. That's not a bad
Mhm.
thing, you know, to do, if I can drive, to drive something, those are definitely not bad investments. And then the other part is, with treatment, it's not like I can say, well, I'll just not go to treatment so that I can go visit with somebody, so you are doing a balancing act with that. But those are some of the big ones. And then my tiny home right now
Right.
is getting moved, is one that's being moved up more, because I do feel like that's something I have wanted for a long time, since I became more involved in sustainability and the environment. Then it's like, oh, that when David left home, my thoughts were, I'm going to get a tiny home, in the middle of nowhere. I'm not going to be in the middle of nowhere anymore because of my health, but that was my original thoughts. I'm going to be a tiny home, middle of nowhere. I'm just going to love it. I'm going to be, immersed in nature, and it was going to be something I was going to build with my own two hands and see that creative side. And now I'm obviously not going to be building it with my own two hands, but I am going to have a role in what it looks like, its design, because I want it to look like me. So then later, if friends or family say, hey, let's go to Arizona and spend a weekend or a week or whatever, that they could be comfortable there. And when they're around, they're going to think, wow, this looks like Dita,
Yeah. Yeah.
this totally looks like her. So that's one of my next priorities, is making sure.
Okay. So you're always, I can count on you to just say whatever you're thinking. So how about, are there any negatives to the bucket list, or anything that you've been going through this that you've been like, oh, well, that was kind of sold as, or what's the
I
things
think
people should think about that's
I
not
think
all
some,
great?
yeah, I think some of the negatives are that we still are limited in resources, that when somebody gets a prognosis that may be 6 months, mine obviously was longer than that, then who has 6 months where they can just say, I can do whatever? So if one of their big highlights on their bucket list was to go someplace that's going to cost more than they possibly have, then there could be a sense of failure, or like the one thing I wanted to achieve or experience, I'm not going to be able to do. And that's hard. That's what's the whole premise of Make-A-Wish for kids and some of those other foundations, is for that very same thought. But we don't have anything like that for adults, because I guess, in our society, we just kind of believe that, well, you should have worked, should have picked up a second job and experienced that already. But we do recognize that for kids, that there might be something a kid has always wanted to do, for their short life, what is something we can provide them, this sense of joy, this experience or whatever. And we don't do that for adults, but then I can see where an adult would feel like for me right now, the tiny home is one of my big bugaboos, as far as I don't know, I don't want to go and not have completed the tiny home
Hmm.
and have had some time to experience it, and lived in it. I don't even care if it's a couple of months. I mean, obviously I would want more than that, but I want that since that has been so important to me in my life for a long time. I want to be able to experience that. And so that's huge for me is that. So I don't want to end, so that's a negative. The other thing is that I know talking about the bucket list is talking about the fact that I'm going to die, and is talking about what is it that you want to do before that happens. And so for me, I talk about it all the time, not the bucket list, but my prognosis for the most part. But I can see where for someone else that might be very difficult to talk about or even share, because it means that you're admitting that that you're on a limited time frame. And so that's why these things are more important than others. And sometimes I don't know if people would even understand it without saying it's the bucket list. If all of a sudden you were like so focused, like if all of a sudden I was focused on this tiny home, people might not understand why that's so important to you until you say bucket list, and then other people realize, oh, because that's something you want to experience. But so you have to bring up that this is why it's become so important.
So a question I have on that. So why haven't you done like a GoFundMe for the, and I think I know the answer, right? But a GoFundMe for your tiny home, right? Because I could set that up, right? And,
Mm.
I think people on a far, I think that's something that, people would support and say, oh, cool, I could give some money and then Dita can have her bucket list in her tiny home, right? But why not that route? Why isn't that a route to something for you?
I honestly don't know on that one, other than the fact that, you try and do things you're on your own. I do know that when I got hit with the loss, when Blue Cross Blue Shield dropped me from because I had hit my maximum with my treatment and diagnosis and everything for them, they dropped me. And then so there was a short period of time that I had no insurance. It was probably about 4 or 5 months that I didn't have insurance. And we have talked about this before, and the treatment cost was ridiculous. That it's like, yeah, then I'm just not going to get treatment. Unfortunately, that just means until I can get insurance again, I'm not going to get treatment. And the insurance policies that are on the healthcare website, you know, for where I'm at on treatment, weren't even going to cover those treatments because so they were considered category 6, which is so funny how these categories come out of no one talks about a category 6, until they say, oh yeah, we don't cover category 6. And you're like, I didn't even know I was talking about a category 6, but oh, okay, whatever. I did have, well, I didn't do it, but a friend of mine started a GoFundMe for that because of the fact that trying to figure out, well, how am I going to cover some of this treatment? And again, I think there is a difference in the way we see adults, the
Hmm.
way we see certain people, and so for that GoFundMe, I think it raised somewhere around 1,500 or so dollars, which I am so thankful for because it did help cover some of the take-home meds. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the things to keep me from getting shingles since I have no immune system. It covered some of that, but it really honestly didn't raise a huge amount of money for me because it's almost like you have to have the right story. At least I find that you have to have the right story at the right time with the right viewer that says, wow, that really touched me. That's something I want to give towards. And I obviously didn't have that story, and maybe it's because she's retired, or, she's, all that. Why didn't she have a bigger savings? I don't know. I don't know why it didn't hit the way it did. And at that point, I was looking for medical care, not
Right.
something that
Right.
is not something that like a tiny home that would be not a necessity. Do you know what I mean? In a lot of people's eyes, it would not be a necessity. So, and people still were not looking at, yeah, let's see if we can support this. So I guess that's part of, why I didn't even think about it for the tiny home. I did at one point because I used to volunteer at Nourish. They had put in for me for that extreme home makeovers. But at the time we hadn't bought our property.
Mm.
And so I was in a rental. And so we put in for that. And then they said I could put in for it again. That's honestly just pure laziness that I haven't put in, but that not to say that I would be necessarily selected, but it honestly has been just pure laziness that I didn't resubmit now that I'm a property owner and not talking about like this rental, because it is going to require certain things. Like I have to have a roll-in shower, I have to, things have to be accessible, that wider pathways to make sure that if I need go back to a wheelchair, that I can have a wheelchair, that if I need palliative care, which is always typically the end of what I have, you end up with some time period of palliative care. Then I have the proper spacing for someone to be able
Mhm.
to come in and provide that level of care. And
And this
so I have thought about doing that again, for sure.
whole thing too is crazy, and there's multiple parts to it. One being the insanity of our healthcare system,
Yeah.
because without going into a ton of, you've already touched on this. They deny your PET scan. Now you have brain tumors that have to be surgically removed, and it's like the oncologists or somebody who would know says do
Yes.
this to prevent that. They say no. Now you're going through this extra surgery, this extra, that could have just been done with radiation and
Hmm.
this mess.
Right.
You're, in that right weird spot where, hey, here, how many of us can handle tens of thousands of dollars in
Right.
treatment per month, and that's after insurance covers it. I mean,
Right.
there's all kinds of crazy things on the medical side, and then on the bucket list side, you know, it is a bucket list. It's something that you would. There's that whole, I also don't see you. You've always taken care of yourself. You've always taken care of your
Correct.
family. So there's an element, and I can totally see this too. You know, no, this is that situation where I'm at. I'm not going to ask other people, right, for
Right.
help, getting that thing, which is different. And this is with the Kickstarter, because we're actually creating a very, what we think is a very valuable resource
Correct.
for people. And oh, you might like this, and we'll have to talk about it too off air. Katie's in healthcare, and so she is making a list and has been talking to a couple different people. And no matter I'm gonna talk to some people later on and just see what kind of interest that they in the
Right.
medical field that they have for maybe doing some research or some testing to see if this can, what kind of effect it can have on that. So
Yeah.
what we're
When I
making,
go in, because I go through Virginia Piper Cancer Center, that was
okay,
one of my thoughts too, is talk to them in the office there, that, hey, here's something that we're doing. And I know they're always looking for ways, to help support. And if it just means that there's this journal possibility out here, then maybe that would be the help, because I really do think it's of value.
yeah, well, and I think what's really neat too is I think no matter what happens with this and talking about the bucket list, right? And what we're doing with this Kickstarter, I don't know what is going to happen. I've already won because you and I are on our fourth, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
40 to 60-minute
Yeah.
conversation. And we talk on the phone sometimes, but I get to see you. It's like, why weren't we
Right.
doing this
Right.
earlier? And we've got an excuse, but we also have a goal. So for me, that's a win. If part of
Yes.
our friendship legacy can be that this journal exists and maybe we get it connected to some people in the health industry who can actually get it to
Yeah.
other people too, well, that's just
Yeah.
wonderful gravy on top.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. I feel like that having that open communication that we're now having more frequently, allows us to build our relationship and keep it where it's at and stronger, in that. And so that's beautiful. But like you said, if there's somebody who has cancer or has a friend that has cancer, and this helps them to process their emotions and what they're going through better, then it is gravy, it is absolutely gravy that could be the legacy of our friendship,
Yeah.
that we were able to get through to let people know that it's okay to not know what to say. It's okay to not know when not to say something, or how to say something if you're talking to a friend, you know, about what you may be going through. So, because you're trying to get them to understand, or if you don't want to talk to a friend, but you need to get the information out, it's there. The other thing with the journal that we know, journals don't go with the person. So in the end, it leaves something behind for even family. Cause I know that's something that I do with my sister's journals, after she passed, going through some of her journals really allowed me to reflect on moments in time that, because she wrote in hers every day, and of what the same experience. We were both going through the same thing, but now I see better what she was feeling, her thoughts on that she never necessarily told me, but because she journaled them, and so then it gives me something to look back on that is also very reflective of who she was as a person. So
You know, I was thinking on the bucket list and potential negatives, and again, 'cause for me, in my pettiness, sometimes what we're doing, right, I think is awesome. And
mm,
if anybody else doesn't get it, I just want to shake them. Like,
yeah.
don't you
Yeah.
see what we're
Right.
doing? Are you an idiot? Uh,
Yeah.
it- and I spent 20 years telling my students that, 99% of the world's population doesn't care what you think.
Yeah.
And and that's a good thing, right? But so you can be yourself,
Right.
and if you're going to convince somebody of something, one, you have to start a relationship with them, and two, you have to meet them with what their values are, what
Right.
their
Right.
needs are. And then to throw on top of that, you might have a great idea, but if the word doesn't get out, it doesn't really matter. There's no freebie, right? Just because you and
Right.
I think this is great doesn't mean
Correct.
it
That the
happened.
world around us is going, look at those two. Though
Yeah.
they're fantastic. Because the
So
world is nuts. Like we know the world is nuts.
So I get, I find myself, and I have to be careful, right? Get angry, right? If
Yeah.
I say this and hey, doing this journal, and I get crickets from someplace, and it's like
Yeah.
that's okay. They get to be concerned about their own thing, which I don't even
Right.
know what it is, right? Because they got their own, like the woman at church who came back crying. I don't know why she
Yeah.
was crying. I'm guessing it
Yeah.
wasn't tears of joy.
Yeah. Yes.
She might not be really thinking about what I'm thinking about. In
Right.
So when the bucket list comes up, because one of the questions I had is what for the friend, what's on your friend's bucket list that you can help with? It's that maturity and balancing act too of, okay, Dita wants to do this. I want to help. Maybe my boss can give me the time off, and I'm my own boss, so that's not an issue. But there's going to
Yeah.
be other
Right.
people in the world who are going to be like, oh, that's nice. I can't help you because
Hmm.
I'm focused on this thing, or you can't get that weekend off because that's when we have this done and all of this has
Hmm.
to happen. And, then you're that person's put in a tough position. But
Right.
the world, the world for the most part doesn't care about anybody's bucket list.
Right. And
So
the other thing is that I think about is my friend circle, which is not extremely huge. I know a lot of people, but my actual people I would say are friends is not very big. And we're all working people. I unfortunately don't have millionaires or billionaires in my friend circle that are flying all over the world, and buying crazy stuff where they would go, Oh yeah, not a problem. I dropped that last night on a new bracelet.
Yeah.
I don't have that. So there are things that when you're sharing even your bucket list, that if a friend is trying to help you, you are also realizing that they're coming from the same financial grouping you're in, that working middle class, you know, that's being pulled with groceries and gas and their kids' activities, all of that. So you can't honestly feel like I don't feel like I wouldn't want my friends to say, we sacrificed this because Dita wanted to go on Route 66. So we're going to pay for the
Right.
gas to go. Like that doesn't make sense. So for me, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to pay for the gas. Now I've invited friends to go along or to meet me along the way, that type of thing, with the idea that if we go together, we split things. We'll split the stay. If we could stay in the same hotel, great. But if not, it's something that I would also be planning to fund. You know what I mean? And then of course my tiny home, I'm a absolute sustainability recycler person. Like there
Yes.
is nothing wasteful in my bones. It hurts my heart to think things are going to waste. So somebody had a window, a bathroom window that they were getting rid of. I have that sitting in my son's living room because we have to stop and get that for sure. Do you know what I mean? Because that's going to be the bathroom window in my tiny home. I have
I
my
will.
friend collecting wine bottles because I would like a glass sunflower window at the top. And it already is going to come with the hexagon kind of window. And so I want to have it encircled with these, like the seeds of a sunflower.
Mhm.
But using the glass bottles. So we're saving those. So I'm already doing stuff like that, which brings me joy, to think that I'm getting pieces to what's going to eventually be. Because I'm also not going to be saying, I want someone to pay for
Right.
this.
Yeah. Well, one, and there's a reason when you've been up here, you haven't seen the garage, and I'll never show you the garage because you'll look around and say, "Why do you have all this stuff, Steve?" And I'll be like, "I have my reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
Stay
Just
in your
know
tiny home."
that.
That's not.
As Paul Ingalls said, especially at Christmas time, it's not a time to ask questions.
But on the bucket list, and I'm wondering if we should make an adjustment or add a question. If should there be different bucket lists, like the relationship bucket lists? Spending
Mhm.
time with the people that you care about, the adventure bucket list, right? The things about, Route
Right.
66 or Walnut Grove. I wonder if so that way categorizing and putting things in different orders can number one separate, what
Mhm.
what are you really looking for? Because you know what? If there's an adventure, adventures are awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Route 66 or something bigger, smaller, total validity in that.
Right.
Friendships and relationships, you know, I'm not saying one is better than the other, assuming
Right.
they have some,
Right.
core relationship or two, but
Right.
yeah. So I think we'll have to figure out a couple different
No, I
categories.
do think that's a good idea. I know in my head and on mine, I have it as a one list, but I do know I have them I know that they're separate categories. So when I'm making adjustments for things, then I have not adjusted the contact with friends.
Mhm.
And if I find that, oh, there's this friend that I haven't been in contact with, then I reach out, like, oh, I'm slipping into old ways that you're going day by day and then you let that time go by. And even though they're still friends, and I still love them and they love me, then it's like, okay, now what I said was I wanted to make sure that I was in for more frequent contact. So I need
Mhm.
to contact this person. So it's that reminder too that like, okay, I haven't talked to this person in a while. Let me talk to them so that they know what's going on. I just sent a text message to my mentor teacher, that sends me a devotion every day, so she's faithful about contact, but she's also like a second mom for me. And I find that interesting that as much as she reaches out, you would think it would be so simple just to simply hit return, hey, thanks.
Eh,
Just even something
nope.
like that. Nope. You read it and you go, "Oh, that's beautiful." "Oh, that was really helpful today. Don't tell anybody." So I finally wrote her back, and said, "Hey, here's where things are, and this is what's going on."
Hey, Thursdays used to be your day, right?
It's still gonna be my chemo day, even with this new treatment. Yeah.
Yeah, because I just wanted to, since we need to be honest and tell you, I would just get so angry on your chemo days that you wouldn't respond immediately to my text. So I just stopped
Yeah.
to spite you for
Yep.
not being there for me on chemo
Right.
days, Dita. It's
You
an
know what? I
anger.
have my dad, bless his heart, at his stage, he forgets. And so I'll tell him I have an appointment this day, and he will literally blow up the phone that day. You know what I mean? Even when he knows. And then when you call him and say, "Remember, I had an appointment that day, so I can't answer while I'm in with the doctor or whatever." And then he'll go, "Oh, that's right. That's right. Well, I was just checking on you." Okay. The one day I'm asking you to that's not one I'm gonna be able to easily access the phone to, is the one day that you are like, "Oh, I gotta absolutely talk to her today," you know? But I do
Well,
think that's a great idea, that if people divide it out, I know for me, the other thing I did, which is kind of like part of the bucket list, but not the bucket list, was for the tiny home, I have a dream board.
yeah.
And or like a vision board, but I did just specifically the tiny home looks, things I want, that type of stuff. And I just did it on simple poster board, cut out things from magazines, drew in a few things, wrote a few things. I have a few positive words, about it because of how it makes me feel. Because I find that that also helps, that to look at that and go, okay, you know what I mean? You have an idea. It's a clear idea, of what it is that you want. So allows you not to get off the path either.
Well, and I think right when having something to look forward to, even if it's 10 minutes from now or an
Yes.
hour from now, or it's a good,
Yeah.
something, a fruit that you like for lunch. I mean, those small things are more real than a lot of the bigger stuff too. Not,
Right.
and it's so
Right.
easy to, easy for somebody without cancer to get caught up in just the struggles of the day to go,
Right.
and not have
Right.
that gratitude. And then you throw in what you're going through,
Yeah.
in those kind of things. Um, you the other questions that I had in the Friends journal that were related to this was, what's one of the best memories with your friend? Followed up by, what are some new memories you'd like to create? And it's interesting when I think about this, like with my friend Jared, right? We became friends in college, so he's a newcomer, right, compared to you.
Yeah. I was kind of dismissing already what you were saying.
A lot of memories with him are like him and I going out and doing something on a weekend, right? Like a
Uh-huh.
road trip to Rushmore, or we'd go just going out and playing some music and drinking some beer and
Right.
just kind of doing that. When I think about you, it's always around laughing, right? Like
Yeah.
the Beanie Weenie story and just
Yeah.
hanging out and having fun and talking.
Right.
And so the new memories are like, well, I want more of the old memories.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now we're doing the Zoom, and it's like we are almost always talking about something serious and then mixed in laughing.
Right. Right.
So, and now we have this to do. So I think it's valuable to, I get to have my wants too, right? And if you're
Right.
going to be terrible and bail on me on
Yeah.
Thursdays because of chemo,
Yeah.
I'll just have to deal with
Yeah.
it. But, it's important for, right, everybody involved to think about
Yeah.
what it is you want, understanding that people get to say no,
Yes.
but to be clear about it, because at least now I know, oh, you know what? That's something I want. I can start making efforts towards it. And some of it, I think, just falls into place or can happen like us doing these calls. I mean, I wasn't
Right.
when I brought up the journal idea a couple months ago, I wasn't thinking this, but it just naturally came from that.
Right,
And
right.
it's us working together on something instead of solving all the world's problems over nachos.
Yes.
Now we're actually creating, right,
Yeah,
a journal that can help people going through what we're going through and not tell them what to do, right? But give them a place so they can explore,
right,
what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And I think too, right, that's both of us are really about empowering people
right,
to be who they want to be in their authentic
right,
self.
right. And I do strongly believe that. I believe in sometimes the answer is no. That's not what I want, even from my friends, or that's not what I can do, And so I do find now that, I can't drive, at least for this moment, because I was just telling somebody, I really hope that at some point I can drive again because
Mm.
that loss of independence is really difficult for me, to deal with. So I find myself asking when I'm asking for rides, saying things like, but if it doesn't work for you, I'm okay with that. There's not going to be any like hard feelings and I'm not talking to you ever again because it doesn't work in your life at that moment, because I need this. I will figure the ride part out, if I have to do this. If I have to, because obviously, if I'm gonna get to where I need to get to. But because I do really respect it. I think sometimes friends think I'm saying it as like a oh, she wants to give me an out, but she really needs me to kind of a
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
But I really do sincerely believe that it doesn't have to work around my schedule. Your life didn't stop because mine has this detour, so I can't ask that you give up everything. It would be like when we're coordinating when we're going to do the Walnut Grove, those
Hmm.
like sorry, I'm losing my words, the Walnut Grove trips.
Pageant.
Yeah, the pageant, thank you. When we're talking about that, it's never been this weekend
Right.
I'm coming out and we're gonna do that. It's here's when it's going, what works for you guys, then what works for me. Because like even this last year, with it being the 50th anniversary, we still had to do a little bit of back and forth because again, there's no expectation of, well, Katie, figure out your schedule, and now Steve, figure out your schedule, and I don't care what's happening with the kids, I'm coming out on this day and this is when we're going to go tell your in-laws, get lost, you have to you still have a life because even if I were to die the following day, your life still has to continue and you still have responsibilities and things and goals for yourself and goals with your family and experiences. So when I say I legitimately believe in that idea that it is a two-way. And if something's important, I hope my friends are going to tell me that, you know what, this is really important to me that before your demise, that we have an opportunity to either talk about something, experience something, whatever, so that I understand what's important for them too, because our friendship has never been one-sided. So why would the bucket list be one-sided?
And and it's tricky on this side,
Yes, yeah,
right? But you're right. And i- if I blew up on you wouldn't want me to blow up stuff on my end
yeah,
to do something over there. And I won't. I might push or bend a little bit, right? Which
yeah.
I'm comfortable with, but yeah, it's that weird. No, why would I call it weird? It's that natural thing when you care about somebody,
Right.
you want to, you know, do what you can. But what I can give, what anybody is going to be changing day by day and with what's going on. And,
Mhm.
you know, okay, so I won't want to tear. It's like I can say all this stuff right now, Dita,
Uh-huh.
and mean it. And who knows, I could die first, right? Because
Yeah.
anything could happen. But I wonder a day after, a week after, 6 months after, what I'm gonna be telling myself. Am I gonna be going,
Right.
"Hey, Steve,
Right.
you balanced that perfectly," or, "Oh, you effer, why didn't you
Yeah.
do that one?"
Right, right. And I did that a little bit with my sister, when I was taking care of her,
Oh, right.
and like I just wanted to give everything I possibly could to making sure that she was as comfortable and as happy as she possibly could be. But yet I still had to work, because I was still teaching then. Still had to work. I still had life, and I still had at the time just the, one grandson, and then the second grandson came in the picture. And so it was the huge balancing act. And but there were times when I would feel like I I'm gonna have to not spend time here because
Mhm.
I need to be here with her, or I want her to be able to experience this. So Christmas is gonna be at my place, even though I know that makes it a little bit awkward for other people because Marquita was not, herself at that point. And but it's important for her to have those still be a part of. Like I
Mhm.
want her to feel like she's not shoved in a room and forgotten about, and we're all out having a great laughing, joking time, that she's a part of our lives. But then there are times when you felt guilty. Like I felt guilty about going to work. There were times when I felt guilty about that, even though I had to
Yeah,
work. Like I was still
right.
trying to support myself. It's like somebody's got to pay the bills. Somebody's got to pay for the CNA that's there when I'm not there. But I still felt very guilty at times and I don't think you can escape it 100%, but what does bring me some comfort is I know that I honestly did the very best I could when it came to that balancing act. I didn't want David to feel like he was no longer important. I didn't want Khalil to feel like we couldn't have Mima time and where he
Yeah.
spent the night and we did movie night kind of thing because he was really into the movie night when he was young, popcorn and fall asleep before the movie even gets 5 minutes in, but it was important for him to have that feeling. And so I still tried to do those things at the same time. I was still feeding her, bathing her, taking care of her, during that time. And so so I feel good about that. But there are times when you go, did I do enough? Was there enough? Because I think that's our natural response when we care about the person. Like, could I have given more time? I took a beach trip right before she got sick, or that put her into the hospital where she never came out of that hospital and went into hospice. And I took a beach trip because it had been quite a while and I had been working, and it's like, and for me, the forest and the beach lets me re-center myself. And we talked about that before. It's a recentering for me. And it's my annual trip that I would take. And I thought, no, I'm going to go. It's 3 days. I really need it. I'm going to pay for the care, givers to be there.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to have to trust that whatever is meant to be is going to be meant to be. But still, there are times when I look back and go, should I have taken that trip? Do you know what I mean? Like maybe if I hadn't taken that trip, she wouldn't have. And I can't say that anything would have been any different other than I wouldn't have taken the beach trip. I do know I came back recharged though,
Yeah.
you know? And so, and I know they have caregiver classes, that talk about stuff like that, but they don't have classes for friends of cancer patients. They don't have
Yeah.
classes that are dealing with similar, not the same, but similar things where you're, like you said, you're going to be, do I want 6 months from now? Am I going to be looking back going, why didn't I cancel this so I could go visit her? Do you know what I mean? Well, I don't want anybody to feel that way. Know that, you make the time when you can. You still are living your life. You still your family, and your life is going to go on. If mine ends before yours, obviously your life is going to go on. And you don't want those memories of to be with your kids go, Dad was checked out from us from this time to this time because his
Yeah.
friend was sick. You know what I mean?
I do, and I think too, one of the things that I'm doing about that is, I talk to my wife about how I'm feeling, and
Yeah,
what we're doing. So there's no, that's just all out in the open, and she knows what I'm thinking about in our
right.
and and I've got a couple men. We meet twice a month, and you know if something's coming up or I'm feeling things, I'll bring it up there and talk to it. So I think for both sides, right? Going it alone, not the best option. And to
Right.
have you can have different people for different things to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I'm sure you need somebody to complain about Me Too, right? And
I got
then
five people.
you might need two more. Uh, right, but you could have, you know, building a support system or tapping into the one that you have and trusting that they can handle this
Hmm.
new part that's going on because they're your support system and you care about them. And that didn't even click till we were talking, just about, and I think I have something in there, but I'm going to go back over the list um for looking in to
Hmm.
building strength or recognizing building strength, building if needed, and strengthening your support system.
Right.
And that goes around to so much of what you even talked about too. Some of the ways that we can give support or get support is actually giving support, right? Like you
Yeah.
volunteering at Nourish actually
Right.
turned out to help you a lot. And I think
Right.
to be able to take some time, to do something else. Like I'm doing the um Sunday school, and not Sunday
Hmm.
school, confirmation,
Oh,
right,
okay.
is gonna start up, and I did it for the first time last year, and it's Sunday, it's an hour, it's no big deal, but I wanted to, because confirmation actually it was funny, I went a long time without being tapped into, church at all, but confirmation always meant a lot to me, and
Hmm.
so I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna do it." I've done, tons of work with teenage, boys for the mentoring stuff I did. So probably a good fit. And it's good. I get out of my head and there's two different ones that meet. Wednesday night is the more outgoing, raucous.
Hmm.
Sunday, and that's the one that I'm going to because it fits my schedule best. I picked
Right.
the
Right.
one that's easiest for me to do. Um, and they're quiet and reserved. So sometimes it's like pulling teeth, but
Yeah.
you know, just to be there. And then there's these, 12 to 15-year-olds because three grades, and just, what they're going through, what they're thinking about in the shyness. It
Hmm.
is great to be, I'm totally out of my head,
Yeah.
you know, just there. And oh, I wish I could draw it up. But oh, and sometimes check this out. I thought this was brilliant. They were talking about friendship and what do you do when basically somebody's being mean to somebody else, right? Or
Mm.
in this, it was around like somebody brings up a topic that's really just meant to hurt. And this one, you know, tween or something, 12, 13, kid
Hmm.
was like, ask why they're bringing that topic up.
Right.
And I'm like, man, that's brilliant. I am totally taking it,
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
I came up with it. It's
Yeah.
like, but it was,
Yeah.
and then of course, because they're little, there's tons of things, that we get to offer, because
Yeah.
we all have stuff. And it was funny. I just said this and I got it from somebody else. There was we had meetings before it. So before this thing started, and it was a way for all of us who are, helping lead the circles,
Right.
could meet. And it's only a couple adults, mainly it's kids who have been through confirmation. So now they're sort of returning the favor and they get to be
Um,
mentors. And I was talking to this kid, he's from a different, didn't know too many people. He was nervous and he was just starting it. And I said, you know what? Um, when this starts, because there's a thing coming up, Mike, you know what it's like to be nervous. Go find somebody who looks nervous, a young kid who looks nervous, and help them be a little bit less nervous. And he's
yeah.
like, yeah, I could do that, right? He just
Yeah.
needed that,
Yeah.
right? Getting out of your head, see somebody who looks like they could need just a
Yeah.
little friendship or nice, and
Hmm.
go do that. Um, I don't know how we got there from support, but uh,
Because that is providing support. So
yeah,
now you're taking what I got it because now you're taking what it is that is it like was stuck in his head, and now he's going to get helped, and now he feels better about himself and about his situation because now he can offer support to
yeah.
someone that would be feeling similar, that's younger and then needs to get out of their own head too, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. And you're helping. So then now that's one more
Right.
thing
Oh,
that
I
you're
feel good.
doing to help and support. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're always trying to look for praise for yourself.
I am. External validation. It's what I live for.
I gotta have somebody tell me I'm doing great.
Well, I think this is a good place to wrap up.
Okay. All right.
And unless you got any final thoughts that you want to share?
No, just I guess the only thing I would say is that when it comes to that bucket list, I would say for those who don't have one, whether you have some illness or don't, that start thinking about what is it that you really want to accomplish in your life and the why, and is there somebody that you want to accomplish that with or experience that with? So for me, there are things that are very specific, and then there are things that are like, yeah, I could do that by myself, but it would be more joyful if I did it with these people because they would appreciate it or they would feel. But knowing that not everybody can do and would have the time or the resources necessarily to do what you want. But think about it before you get to the point where you have a time limit, where because I think that's one of the unfortunate parts is we do wait sometimes to think about the things that we want to accomplish in our life until somebody says that you don't have a whole lot of life left. And then now all of a sudden it's important. Yeah.
And on the friend side, I would just add too, there are 101 ways to support your friend's bucket list.
Yeah.
In Dita's case, well, I'm in Minnesota. It was a no-brainer. Come up, stay
Right.
with us, and set this
Right.
thing up. But if I wasn't in Minnesota, even sending Little House on the Prairie gifts, or
Yeah.
tell me about the trip, and actually being really curious and say, send me pictures of you in Walnut Grove or something. There's
Right.
a huge range from being part of that trip to just supporting from all kinds of different
Right.
ways to do that.
Right. Wearing a bonnet, which you have yet to do while we're talking, would be really supportive. It would make me feel like I was talking to a character.
Oh, it and Dita did buy a beautiful bonnet
I
from
did a yellow
the
one.
museum.
Yeah. I plan on using it as I'm gardening around my tiny home.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and love you, Dita.
Love you too.